The great hall of the Valeri hegemony was not designed for silence. It was a cavernous expanse of obsidian and bioluminescent crystal, acoustically engineered to amplify the chittering debates of 1,000 systems, the drone of diplomatic servitors, and the thunderous proclamations of the High Exarchs. Yet now, the silence was absolute, a physical weight that pressed against the sensory organs of every being present. It was the silence of a graveyard before the grave is dug. The holographic sphere suspended in the center of the chamber, usually a vibrant tapestry of trade routes and fleet movements, displayed only static, a jagged gray scar where the 7th Conquest Armada had been stationed only an hour ago. Exarch Kael'thas, his chitinous armor polished to a mirrored sheen that now seemed only to reflect his own mounting terror, gripped the podium with trembling claws. He looked out at the gathered representatives of the galactic Concordat, the fluid aquatic hydrons in their suspended tanks, the rock-skinned Grognar, the ethereal energy beings of the Cygnus Drift, and saw his own fear mirrored in every posture. They had been so certain. They had been so arrogant. The report lay on the display before him, the data streams frozen on the final transmission. It was impossible. It was a glitch, a sensor echo, a mass hallucination. It had to be. Because if it was real, then everything they understood about the hierarchy of the galaxy was a lie. "Speak," Kael'thas rasped, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics, sounding thin and brittle. "Tell me again. Tell me it is an error." The fleetmaster, a battle-hardened veteran named Raxian, whose scarred carapace usually exuded an aura of invincibility, looked smaller than Kael'thas had ever seen him. Raxian did not look at the High Exarch. He stared at the floor, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm of suppressed panic. "It is no error, Exarch," Raxian said, his voice low. "The 7th Armada is gone, not retreated, not rooted, gone, deatomized, the debris field. There is no debris field, there is only dust and background radiation." A murmur rippled through the hall, a sound like dry leaves skittering over stone. "And the aggressor?" Kael'thas demanded, though he knew the answer. He dreaded the answer more than the void itself. Raxian hesitated, finally looking up, his compound eyes dull with shock. "One ship, Exarch." It matched the thermal signature and hull configuration of the Sol Invictus. The name hung in the air like a curse. The Sol Invictus, the undefeated sun. It was a ghost story, a piece of Terran propaganda whispered in the taverns of the border worlds. The humans, those squishy, short-lived bipeds who had barely mastered FTL travel, claimed to have a flagship of impossible power. The Concordat intelligence agencies had laughed it off. They had scanned Terran shipyards, intercepted their comms, dissected their naval budgets. There was no funding for such a vessel, no dry dock large enough to house it, no power source known to physics that could fuel it. It was a myth, a psychological ploy to deter raiders. "A myth does not erase an armada," Kael'thas hissed, slamming a fist onto the podium, cracking the obsidian. "A myth does not bypass shielding rated for supernova impacts. You tell me a ghost story destroyed our fleet?" Raxian activated the tactical replay. The holographic sphere flickered to life. The recording was grainy, distorted by the immense gravitational waves that had preceded the event. The 7th Armada, a formation of devastating beauty, hung in the void above the disputed mining colony of Ethelgard. Then space itself seemed to bruise. A tear in the fabric of reality opened, not a warp gate, not a hyperlane breach, but a violent rending of the dimension. Out of the bleeding void slid a silhouette. It was not sleek like the Concordat ships, nor brutalist like the Grognar dreadnoughts. It was monolithic. A slab of matte black material that drank the light of the nearby stars, featureless save for a single, pulsating line of golden energy running along its kilometer-long keel. It did not hail them. It did not power up weapons batteries. It simply accelerated. The footage showed the Concordat ships opening fire, a storm of plasma and kinetic rounds that should have vaporized a moon. The fire struck the black hull and vanished, absorbed without a ripple. Then the golden line flared. The recording ended. "The sensor buoys in the outer system survived just long enough to transmit this," Raxian whispered. "The energy output. It wasn't weapons fire. It was a localized rewriting of physics. It unmade them." The doors to the great hall groaned open. The sound was so unexpected in the tense atmosphere that half the guards leveled their weapons instantly. Standing in the threshold was not a soldier, nor a warrior. It was a small figure, dwarfed by the scale of the alien architecture. Ambassador Elias Thorn of the Terran Republic walked into the chamber with a gait that was infuriatingly casual. He wore a simple gray suit, no armor, no energy shielding, carrying nothing but a physical data pad. The guards hesitated, looking to Kael'thas for orders. The human walked down the central aisle, the sound of his leather shoes echoing rhythmically, Click, click, click. He stopped at the base of the central podium, looking up at the towering alien leaders with an expression of polite curiosity. He did not look like the representative of a species that had just committed an act of supreme devastation. He looked like a university professor late for a lecture. Exarch Kael'thas, Thorne said, his voice calm, unamplified yet carrying clearly. I received your urgent summons. I assume this concerns the incident in the Ethelgard sector. The audacity stole Kael'thas's breath. Incident? The Exarch roared, his mandibles flaring wide. You call the annihilation of our fleet an incident. You stand there, soft and small, and mock us. We know it was you, human. We know of the Sol Invictus. You lied. You claimed it was a fable. Thorne adjusted his cuffs. We never said it was a fable, Exarch. We said it was a conceptual deterrent. You chose to interpret that as imaginary. We merely chose not to correct you. The calm in his voice was terrifying. It was not the calm of ignorance. It was the calm of a man holding a detonator who knows exactly how much explosive is wired to the building. The Grognar representative, a being of living granite, rumbled forward. You have declared war on the Concordat. You have revealed your treachery. You possess technology banned by the Galactic Treaty, weapons of mass destruction capable of destabilizing sectors. Thorne turned to the rock man, his face hardening slightly. We did not declare war. Your 7th Armada entered a quarantine zone. We warned you. We sent buoys. We broadcast on all frequencies. You fired upon the vessel enforcing that quarantine. The Sol Invictus acted in self-defense. Self-defense? Kael'thas sputtered. It erased them. What kind of ship is that? Where did you build it? How? Thorne looked down at his datapad, tapping a few commands. The holographic sphere above them changed. The image of the destruction vanished, replaced by a star chart. But it was not a chart of the current galaxy. The stellar drift was wrong. The nebulas were shaped differently. It was a map of the galaxy as it was 10 million years ago. You asked where we built it, Thorne said softly. We didn't. A chill swept through the room that had nothing to do with the atmospheric recyclers. Humanity is young, Thorne continued, his voice taking on a lecture hall cadence that was oddly hypnotic. We are barely out of our cradle. You look at us and see children. You see our fragile ships, our kinetic weapons, and you laugh. You think we are struggling to catch up. He looked up, meeting Kael'thas's gaze with eyes that suddenly seemed very, very old. But you forget where we evolved. Earth is a graveyard of epics. We are scavengers, Exarch. We are the species that finds a bone and figures out how to make it a spear. The hologram zoomed in on a dead system on the edge of the galactic rim, a place the Concordat maps labeled as hazardous navigation do not approach. We found the Sol Invictus buried in the ice of a rogue moon in the Uit cloud, Thorne revealed. It wasn't built by human hands. It was left there, a derelict from a war that burned out long before the first amino acids formed in Earth's oceans. We spent 2 centuries studying it. We can barely power the lights. We understand maybe 3% of its offensive capabilities. The silence in the hall was now one of horror. The humans were not technological savants. They were monkeys who had found a loaded handgun of the gods. Why? Raxian asked, his voice trembling. Why keep it hidden? Why not use it to claim an empire? Thorne smiled, a sad, weary smile. Because we were afraid of it. Because every time we turn it on, the fabric of space screams. We kept it as a last resort, a final shield. But you used it, Kael'thas accused. You unleashed it on my fleet. Thorne shook his head. No, Exarch, we didn't unleash it on you. We unleashed it near you. The 7th Armada wasn't the target. The room erupted in confused shouting. Thorne waited, patient as a stone, until the noise subsided. He tapped the datapad again. The hologram shifted to show the sensor data from the Sol Invictus at the moment of firing. The golden beam hadn't just hit the Concordat ships. It had punched through them, yes, but its focal point was behind them, deep in the dark void between stars. There, illuminated by the energies of the ancient weapon, was something else. A rift, a tear in the universe pulsing with a sick violet light, and emerging from it were shapes, not ships, organisms, vast tendrilled nightmares the size of moons made of shadow and hunger. The Sol Invictus had fired a lance of pure reality-stabilizing energy that seared the rift shut. The Concordat Armada had simply been in the way of the cauterization. The void Leviathans, the Hydran representative bubbled, its translation collar screeching with static. The legends of the deep dark, the world eaters, Thorne nodded. They are waking up. Your Armada's warp signatures were drawing them in like blood in the water. If the Sol Invictus hadn't fired, they wouldn't have just destroyed your fleet. They would have consumed this entire arm of the galaxy. The realization hit Kael'thas like a physical blow. The humans hadn't attacked them. The humans had saved them. And in doing so, they had revealed their ace in the hole, the only thing standing between the galaxy and total consumption. The political maneuvering, the border disputes, the arrogance of the Concordat, It all seemed suddenly, pitifully small. Thorne stepped closer to the podium. The ship is not a myth anymore. The galaxy knows it exists, and now they know it exists, he said, gesturing to the closed rift on the hologram. The element of surprise is gone. The Sol Invictus is burning out. Its core is unstable. We cannot fire it again without risking the solar system it anchors. He looked around the room, making eye contact with every terrified leader. We didn't build the ship, but we are the ones willing to stand on the bridge. We are the ones willing to hold the line, but we cannot do it alone. We need your fleets. We need your shielding technology to reinforce the hull. We need your energy cores to jumpstart the secondary batteries. He extended a hand, palm open, a universal gesture of peace but also of invitation. The myth just bought us time, maybe a year, maybe a decade, but the war is coming, the real war. Kael'thas looked at the human. He saw the fragility of the flesh, the softness of the skin, but beneath it he saw a spine of steel. He saw the logical, terrifying pragmatism that had allowed them to keep such a secret, to endure the mockery of the galaxy while sitting on the throne of gods. The humans were not unpredictable chaos. They were the cold, hard calculus of survival. The Exarch slowly unclenched his fist. He looked at the empty space where his armada had been, and then at the violet rift that had almost opened. He realized that the destruction of his fleet was the cheapest price they could have possibly paid. He stepped down from the high podium, his armored feet heavy on the stone, until he stood eye level with the small human. The resources of the hegemony are vast, Kael'thas said, his voice quiet but steady. Our engineers are the finest in the sector. Thorne nodded, his expression grave. Good. Have them ready. The Sol Invictus is waiting. As the council descended into a frenzy of orders and mobilization, the fear was gone, replaced by a grim, unified purpose. The atmosphere in the room shifted from the panic of the prey to the resolve of the pack. Thorne turned to leave, his duty done, but stopped at the door. He looked back at the hologram of the ancient, black ship, the myth that had saved them all. He knew the truth that he hadn't told them. He knew that the Sol Invictus wasn't just a ship, it was a prison. And by firing the main gun, they hadn't just closed a rift. They had cracked the cell door from the inside. The Leviathans were coming, yes, but something else was waking up within the ship itself, something that spoke to the human crews in their dreams, whispering in a language that predated the stars. Humanity had found the spear, but they were about to learn that the spear had a will of its own. Thorne adjusted his jacket, stepped out into the cool night air of the alien capital, and looked up at the stars. They looked different now. They didn't look like territory to be claimed. They looked like campfires in a very dark, very large forest, and something was moving in the trees. Let them come, he whispered to the void. We are not alone anymore.